Sony's flagship console, the PlayStation 5, the machine that's supposed to be one of the most secure pieces of consumer hardware on the planet, has literally just been cracked open in a way that can't be patched with even a firmware update, and I'm not kidding either, this is real. But before we begin, let's thank the sponsor of this video, Factor. If there's anyone that knows me in real life, they know I hate cooking food, but I love eating it. The reason is simple. I'm lazy. I fully admit it. But what Factor does end up eliminating multiple problems for me in one handy package. Instead of spending loads of cash on meals being sent to you by delivery apps, Factor delivers fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals straight to your doorstep, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. It's designed to support your wellness journey. Factor helps eliminate stress around cooking, planning, or cleanup so you can stay focused on your goals instead. And I'm not kidding either. Here I am eating my meal, which was honey mustard chicken with garlic potatoes, and I was actually astounded by how easy it was to prepare. Because you didn't have to do anything pretty much. All you have to do is just poke some holes in the packaging, put it in a microwave or toaster oven like I did, and voila! You have a perfectly healthy and tasty meal ready to go right there. You can enjoy 100 plus rotating weekly options from meals and salads to breakfasts, shakes even, and more, all crafted for great taste and nutrition in mind. Factor also now features double the seafood and double the protein options compared to last year, plus 20 new ready-to-eat salads and grain bowls inspired by Sakura. Meals are designed with ingredient avoidance by default, no pork, fish, shellfish, mushrooms, or spicy ingredients, so you can enjoy flavor-first dishes that fit your preferences. And if you enjoy working out and keeping yourself looking strong, Factor has most of the meals deliver 30 plus grams of complete protein, and can even go up to 53 grams if you want, to support muscle repair and recovery. So now you can enjoy new protein options like short ribs, salmon burgers, and bison sausage parts of the expanded high-protein lineup that they have for you. Another great thing is nothing Factor serves you will have refined seed oils, refined sugars, or artificial colors, or even sweeteners. It's all wholly organic and incredibly healthy for you, so head to factor75.com or click the link below in the description and use code ENDYMIONFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code ENDYMIONFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. I know it kind of sounds too good to be true, but after having tried it myself, it's kind of ridiculous how good Factor really is. Like, here's my mom trying the chickpea offering with the vegetable option, and here's the thing about my mom that you guys might not know, she hates everything. I'm not kidding, I can't take her anywhere without her complaining about something, yet she was impressed by Factor. You have no idea how much of a praise that is if my mom of all people likes eating their food too. Because like I said, that lady hates everything, dude. Even my dogs wanted some of those chickpeas, but it's a bit too much spice for their little palates. Look how cute they are. You can also scan the QR code on screen and get yourself my deal and get yourself all set up real nice and easy too. Again, head to factor75.com or click the link below in the description and use code ENDYMIONFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Plus again, that free breakfast for 1 year. That's code ENDYMIONFB50 at factor75.com. If you want easy, healthy alternative meals that aren't full of nasty byproducts and can be made ready in mere minutes, this is it, guys. It tastes great, it's easy to store, and the convenience is just next level, but thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to it. I'm talking about boot ROM key leaks, game-based exploits, and the beginning of like a true PS5 jailbreak that Sony genuinely cannot fix or stop no matter what they do. But let me explain what I mean. Let's dive in. So at the heart of this is something called the boot ROM keys. In modern consoles, there's a trust chain. Think of this like a foundation of cryptographic checks that make sure that only authorized codes run on the hardware itself. Let me put it another way, okay? Think of it also as like a security chain. First, you got the hardware, which then leads to the bootloader, that then goes to the operating system, and then that takes your real software, and then voila, that's how it works, pretty much. But here's the thing, right? Boot ROM sits at the very bottom of all of this. It's supposed to be unchangeable and unhackable. Supposed to be, right? But it's no longer that anymore, which is, well, if you're Sony, this is very, very bad. As Respawn.com reported here, the PS5 ROM leak could change console security forever, which will also allow for deep system analysis of Sony's hardware to these hackers too. Now, obviously, I am not going to share where to find these hacks or anything like that because I don't want Sony to send ninjas in the middle of the night to carve me up like a Thanksgiving turkey or something, okay? I value my limbs being attached to my body, so I will not be doing that. But in late 2025, something awful, or for some I guess exciting, happened, depending on who you ask, but those boot ROM ROM key values were leaked online. And it wasn't even like a vulnerability that could be patched, it was the keys themselves that leaked. And to add more credence to this, as seen here, even tomshardware.com has reported on this, and yeah, it's pretty dire. But I hear you say, well, couldn't Sony just patch the PS5 with like a firmware update and then fix all of these leaking problems? Like, what can these hackers really do? Well, you see, before when you hacked a console like a PS3 or an Xbox 360, usually you would then use fake versions of those games via discs to then play them on the modded consoles. Most of the time, these players would then opt to play these games on their consoles, maybe sign up to whatever live service they want to use stupidly, let's say like Xbox Live, right, for 360. Microsoft would then authenticate the game, realize the copy being played was illegitimate because it had the same ID pretty much of another like exact copy of the game out there in the wild, and then boom, you would get banned because you were dumb and you went online. Well, same thing with PS3 back in the day too. This is how Sony or Microsoft would break your consoles and then turn them into paperweights. However, this time, things have changed because boot ROM keys, which are the crux of this hack, aren't updated with firmware. They're instead, and this is key, physically burned into the very chips that are inside of the PlayStation 5 itself right now. Every PS5 in the wild, if you own a PS5, you have this too. That means that every PS5 ever sold is potentially vulnerable forever now. Unless Sony revamps the hardware entirely, which yes, that could be something they do in the future with when they make more PS5s, I guess, or let's say the PS6. But this means that every PS5 that exists right now in this instant can be compromised, and Sony genuinely cannot do anything about it. This is why this problem is absolutely knucking futz, and I'm surprised I don't see many people talking about this on YouTube or social media or anywhere really. So anyway, to understand why this matters in the first place, it needs to be said that Sony's systems rely on secrecy. Duh, I know. If anyone can decrypt the bootloader, then anyone can study it, modify it, and test their own code against it, and Sony can't do anything about it. So once that trust chain is broken by these, I guess, hackers, everything above it is at risk of being compromised then. It isn't just some homebrew nonsense. No, guys, this is deep system access to Sony's internals on what makes their cash cow system work. As GenerationNT.com reported here for you all to see, this means that millions of PS5s are at risk of being permanently jailbroken, and as they say there at the very end, Sony is actually powerless to stop this sort of thing. I think the way GenerationNT.com puts it here is good. Here's what they said. The problem is enormous. These keys are physically embedded in the ROM of the console's AMD processor. They are immutable. Unlike a software vulnerability, Sony cannot modify them via an update. The only solution would be to produce new chips, which will only affect future consoles. For the more than 60 million PS5s already in homes, the door is now wide open forever. You see what I mean? Yeah, when I look at IGN or GameSpot or any other big news media website, it's utter silence on this topic. Nobody's talking about this at all. Like, what gives? This is insanely bad, yet it's just silence from everywhere. What's even crazier about this is that the key to Sony's kingdom has become an obscure Star Wars game that has skyrocketed in price on places like eBay. Let me explain, okay? Here's the game as you can see here. It's called Star Wars Racer Revenge. You're probably wondering, wait, why is an obscure Star Wars game relevant to this story? Yeah, let's get into that now because it's kind of wild. You see, in order to actually enter Sony's code in the PS5, you need what is called a backdoor, so to speak. You can't use Sony's first-party games for this, like Spider-Man, God of War, Uncharted even, and then some. All of these games are unsurprisingly watertight when it comes to these sorts of exploits with Sony's actual console and how it works when you play them in that system. However, like I said, this is where, of all things, Star Wars Racer's Revenge comes into play. It actually turns out that the PS4 physical version of that game, which was published by Limited Run Games, ended up having a bug in it that allowed the game's Hall of Fame function within it to allow a backdoor that slipped right past all of Sony's internal workings. Like, I'm not even kidding. That's what it did. That's why the physical copies of that Star Wars game are so expensive to buy right now, because you're not buying it to play it per se for fun. Well, you could, I guess, but you're actually buying it because that game, when inserted into your PS5, literally breaks the console's integrity and then allows hackers full reign on the insides of it. Isn't that insane? One of these hackers who's been exploiting this is some user on Twitter named Gazine, as Generation NT posted in their own article. As you can see here, Gazine posted how they used Star Wars Racer's Revenge to effectively bypass all of Sony's internal defense systems, and then allow them to do whatever they wanted with the PlayStation 5's infrastructure. But the other reason why this copy of this Star Wars game is so expensive is because the physical version of it is only limited to 8,500-ish copies in the wild right now. That's all that exists of this game. So this means that there's 8,500 or so keys to Sony's kingdom just out there for people to bid on right now. You can buy or use, who knows, maybe even duplicate it in the world. But if you're a billion-dollar company where your console is obviously your cash cow, this is terrible news for very obvious reasons. It means that 8,500 keys now exist to enter your home, and you can literally do nothing about it. Sony would be smart to maybe bid on these games themselves and buy them just to destroy them if they wanted to stop what they can. But let's be real, by now the damage has already been done and the floodgates are probably open. I know, wild, I know. What's also crazy is that this hack will lead to the way for CFWs, or custom firmware, which means that hackers can now run unofficial applications on the PS5 and now transform any PS5 if they want to really into an emulator that can play Sony's entire libraries without Sony being able to do anything about it. This also means the console could be formatted to run Linux as well. This means that piracy is back on the menu with the PS5. Again, not gonna share where to get such links because I don't want Sony drone striking my house, but you get the point. It is absolutely out there. And the level of piracy here is kind of insane because you could compare it to the famous PS3 master key leak back in the day, which actually to this day was one of the most serious security breaches in console history. But okay, yes, sure, having the boot ROM key doesn't necessarily mean you're not suddenly able to hack everything with like a click of a button. However, a good way of looking at it would be if the PS5 is like a bank vault. Then this hack is like having the actual blueprints to the bank vault and knowing exactly how to break the thing open without having to really guess about anything. So this compromises how Sony's games could work, and especially future games too, and the consoles as well. This means that hackers could, with these keys that exist again somehow in those physical Star Wars copies, which is an insane thing to say, but it's 100% true, that the hackers could then decrypt the bootloader, then analyze the PS5 system for its signed code, and then find ways around the checks that Sony has already placed that they believe that no one could ever crack. It not only lowers the barrier for hacking, but it's what's called a cold boot jailbreak from what I could gather online. What that term means is that it's sort of like a jailbreak that doesn't need repeated exploits every single time that it restarts, if that makes sense. It's instead more like a you hack it once pretty much and then boom, you're in forever kind of deal, okay? So I decided to do some digging myself, looked around and tried to understand what exactly was going on here because I didn't fully grasp it obviously. And eventually I found this post from Reddit just a few hours ago as of the making of this video obviously, as seen here from r/one jailbreak. It turns out now there's another exploit also called Luacore, I'm probably saying that wrong, which has been discovered again by that same Gezian guy. That's the same hacker who originally discovered that you could use that Star Wars game as a literal key to hack the entire PS5 console. As the Reddit post stated, this new exploit also works on PS4s that are up to version 13.02 and PS5s that are up to 12.40 in their software updates as well. Meaning that both of Sony's consoles with their insanely large install bases are now compromised big time. From what I understand, this other new exploit is like the first time we've seen an actual jailbreak work on newer PS5 hardware. So Sony's defense systems are getting caught up by these hackers really fast, way faster than they thought they would. There's even more jailbreak concepts gaining traction from what I could gather online, like from onejailbreak.com, which as you can see here details how hackers are now also using another method called Y2JB, which is apparently short for YouTube jailbreak. That hack is apparently some new exploit that runs directly through the YouTube app that then allows hackers to access PlayStation 5's internal software as well. Again, I am not posting any links to this because it can get me banned, but oh boy, this is not good. But you see, the problem here, from what I'm understanding anyways, is that ultimately Sony's security model, which is meant to protect their users and their console's integrity, is honestly just not evolving fast enough. Like, that's probably the best way to say it. Like, okay, sure, Sony can patch software hardware vulnerabilities, I guess, but once a hardware root is compromised like it is right now, there's nothing that can reasonably stop it. The only way would be to go to everyone's home that has a PS5 right now and like confiscate it, which is obviously not going to happen, which means Sony now has an entire generation of consoles out there right now that are one Star Wars Racer's Revenge physical copy away from jailbreaking their entire operation. Isn't that wild that that's true? Now, what exactly can be done with a jailbreak like this, you may be asking? Well, for starters, it means that hackers can obviously homebrew and then run third-party applications or custom dashboards and especially emulators. Because it means through emulation, hackers can then run older consoles on the PS5, which is pretty big for game preservation, if you know what I mean. Technically, emulation is legal, sort of, but obviously running pirated games is gonna cause Sony to drive a car through your house if you try to do that. But it gets more complicated because obviously Sony is going to fight back against this due to what it means for their business, obviously. The lore on Sony and their battle against piracy is very long and exhaustive. I don't want to get into all of it, from like the lawsuits and the account bans and more. But the thing is that in many countries, jailbreaking hardware that you own for personal use is technically not illegal. Well, it depends on how you define it, I guess. But I also wonder if this means that Sony could sue, let's say, limited run games, right? Since they did effectively just create 8,500 physical keys pretty much via that Star Wars game that just compromised their entire ecosystem. Something as gross of a miscalculation like that will likely lead to legal discourse, because it means that limited run games obviously did not do their jobs properly if they allowed such an exploit to be replicated and then just sold into the wild without them knowing. Or maybe they did know, who knows? But when you step back to look at the bigger picture, it becomes more than just a story about some nerds trying to mod their consoles. You know, it matters because this is a genuine, like a real security milestone, if you will. Because if a modern console as big as the PS5 can have its hardware compromised, it's going to lessen the confidence of both the players and the publishers and the platform security. Why would you release your game on a platform if it's at risk of your product going free and you can do nothing about it if it happens? But it will also empower models and likely, and this is key, influence the future of how these consoles are actually designed. Honestly, if such a problem can only exist thanks to the existence of a physical game being turned into like a Rosetta Stone key, so to speak, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Sony then opts for a no physical future when it comes to the PlayStation 6 and onwards because of this. It's obvious that this problem only really exists because of an error that can be replicated in physical form. I mean, sure, the PS5 already has a digital-only version, which kind of tells me that Sony has already begun to see the writing on the wall back in 2020 when the PS5 first launched. As GameSpot reported here in September 2025, about 49% of Sony's entire revenue came exclusively from digital game sales. DLC made up another 29% of the pie, if you can believe it. That's wild, but apparently true. Like, that's crazy. But anyway, it's very obvious that the digital-only future is coming. I mean, look at Steam for a great example of how this already works. It's an entirely digital-only platform, and Valve pulls in billions of dollars every single year without so much as lifting a finger. And they have way less hacks too because of it. It's very likely that this hack will cause Sony to double down on a digital future. And as a consumer who usually plays on PlayStation mostly myself, kind of breaks my heart, I gotta be honest, because I love buying games physically, especially the more rare ones. I like to keep sealed copies of games I love on my shelf. I know I'm not the only one either. But if things like that get removed in the future because some people want to, hack everything in existence, it's going to be a huge blow to how people enjoy buying their media. Not to mention, when it comes to game preservation, a big deal is that older games need to be able to be playable no matter how many years pass. Obviously, companies have gotten better with this due to remaster collections and more, but it still has a huge problem that ultimately your game library on PlayStation, for example, can be invalidated and unable to be accessed if you lose access to like the internet for 24 hours, since you can't authenticate your licenses now. This would also just push that future that some have fought against, like stop killing games, where we would be forced into a you owe nothing and you will be happy mentality, because companies can't risk anything compromising their ecosystems in the future, like obscure Star Wars games acting like keys for one. That's a great example, by the way. And if hackers can do this to the PS5 right now, what does that even mean for the next generation of consoles? Do console makers then need to scrap their current trust models, for lack of a better term? Would these companies like Sony then need more open development pathways, or really is the current status quo even sustainable in the long run? It's the kind of question that changes an entire industry, like the more you think about it. But as a regular owner of a PS5, you're likely thinking, well, how does this affect me? The short answer is not yet, but it might eventually. You can't just hack your PS5 with a simple click or anything, and your everyday experience with your games will be unchanged for now. That is true. But in the future, things could change to help push back against these sorts of concepts, as more research is built on how these leaks happened. Could also lead to more user-friendly tools then being made by these hacker types to allow for further exploits to happen even easier. It will just intensify that cat and mouse game between Sony and these hackers, and it will either lead to a thriving mod scene on PS4 and PS5, but the more likely scenario is a massive crackdown by Sony to stop this sort of thing from gaining ground due to how damaging it really is. No matter how you look at it though, things are changing regardless. What it comes down to is that this is a battle over the control of a platform that is utterly massive. PlayStation isn't some small platform, okay? It's bigger than most of its competitors for a reason. It's instead a battle over control of the hardware and the software and the ecosystem even, and especially the user's rights. Because for decades, most consoles could be seen as locked silos, but modders have been opening up seemingly every console to varying degrees for years now. It's never stopped. All the way from the NES back in the day to the PS3, even the PSP was famously hacked like crazy. Everyone knew about that one, even Xboxes too. The PS3, according to Sony, was meant to be different, like a real fortress of security. But ultimately, the entire PlayStation ecosystem now can be hacked into, and that's not good when Sony depends on PlayStation selling games for money to stay in business. It's like a genie, you know? Once it's out, it's not really going back in, and the future of gaming may very well be defined by how companies respond to moments like this in the future. Not just in terms of security, okay, but in terms of openness and ownership and the rights of users versus corporations and all that nonsense and more. But this does then pose a very big question. Do users want their consoles to be locked and closed as a system in the future, or do they want platforms that are more open? I think in Sony's case, the answer is obviously the former. They're like Nintendo in that sense. They need to justify their console's existence to push you in order to spend more money. An open PlayStation would be like the Wild West, but no matter how you want to word this jailbreak, it's a wake-up call, pressing of the panic button, however you want to put it, it's that. Sony has to be smart with how they function in the future, because whether they tighten their security down or these hackers push for more freedom, which they will do, they are hackers, the future of gaming just got a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting too, if you ask me. But there's another big reason why this sort of hack is a really, really worrying prospect, and that is cheating. Back in the PS3 days when that console got hacked also, it then allowed players who broke into Sony's system to then go online and just cheat without a care in the world pretty much. It likely ruined many a Call of Duty match and then some, and I wouldn't be surprised by any of that. As Tom's Hardware suggested here, one of the more radical fixes would be Sony demanding players send in their PS5s to be fixed for this sort of issue, but as Tom's Hardware says there too, it's an unrealistic change. I agree, I already said that, as it would obviously disrupt the entire Sony ecosystem, which is just not something they can really afford to do. I think personally this will lead to future PS5s and eventual PS6s having different hardware to ensure that this can't happen in the future. But this then brings in another issue, which is of course RAM chips and the prices of that whole mess. To catch you up really quick, AI use has made RAM chips just skyrocket in price because of memory shortages. RAM is everything electronic pretty much, including consoles, obviously, so due to this, RAM chips have raised in price by hundreds of percent because of how sought after this sort of stuff is. Meaning even if Sony could fix the problem physically, it would cost them millions of dollars in RAM chips that they probably can't even find in the first place to fix this problem. But the cheating problem for me is still a big thing, because if there's anything that ruins an online game, it's some kid just flying through a multiplayer lobby while invincible, just shooting 300 rounds a minute while seeing you through the walls. Cheats have ended games before, and I can't even tell you how far this hack will go yet. It's just the beginning of this whole thing being cracked open. Who knows what ungodly discoveries these hackers will find, and I should probably say this now, but I don't hate these hackers, by the way. I totally get why they're doing this in the first place, because they just love how to see things work, and really this is the fault of, I would probably say, limited run games more than anyone else. Because they clearly did not test that Star Wars racing game enough if hacks like this could be so easily found from the things that they made. But either way, this has happened, it's real, there's no changing it. Sony can't stop their console now from being hacked, and now I genuinely do think this will lead to a future where a PlayStation 6 will go all in on a digital-only future to ensure things like this don't happen again. And be sure to check out the sponsor of this video, Factor, or click the link below in the description and use code ENDYMIONFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code ENDYMIONFB50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Maybe these hackers could hack Spider-Man 2 and give it a better story. Good lord, I can only wish. But yeah, see you in the next one, guys.